Calendars are an essential part of all traders' toolkits. Everybody needs to know what they are and how to use them. Hi, I'm Joe Neighbour from Acuity Trading, and I'm going to be talking about some of the trading tools that are available on FXPesa's customer portal. I'm going to focus today on the calendar tool. Markets are exceptionally volatile, and economic data is typically the source of that volatility. Now, the calendar tool is available under the analysis section, and at the top you can select market calendars. Here you will get two options. You can look at corporate and economic calendars. Corporate calendars are focusing on stocks and shares and market moving events such as earnings, dividends, calls and webcasts, stock splits, and mergers and acquisitions. On the economic side, this is where we're focusing on the big macroeconomic data, the sort of information that's going to move the likes of currencies, indices, commodities, and cryptocurrencies. Now, on the calendar tool, we can look well in advance, we can look at the current day, or we can look in the past. And with this handy tool, we can see and visualize all of today's information and previous day's information to give us a head start on what to expect for the day ahead. On the economic calendar, we can look at today's most impactful events. What is going to move the market today? Now, on this screen, you can see three tabs. We have a green, a grey, and a red tab. These are indicative of the impact levels that we expect as a result of these particular data points. Anything in green is determined to be low impact and therefore unlikely to have much of an influence on market prices. In the grey box, we have medium impact events, which could have an impact on the market, but more often than not, typically are not that market moving. The high impact events, however, in red are typically major events that could have a dramatic impact on volatility. On each of these boxes, we have a number which indicates the number of different macroeconomic data points that are due out for that particular day under those particular impact levels. So on this focus here, we're looking at the US employment report, and we can see that this is a high impact event. It is pretty much the number one market moving event that everybody anticipates weeks in advance. This data point comes out once a month, typically on the first Friday, and we can see the sort of impact that this particular event has on a number of different assets. By scrolling down on the calendar, we can see all the details for this particular event, what the expectations were in terms of the forecasts, what's happened previously, and most importantly, what the actual number was. This calendar will update in real time, so it will keep you right up to date with the most market moving events that are occurring. Each of these data points that we highlight in the calendar have a detailed description. So this is where you can really educate yourselves to understand what these particular events mean and why they're impactful for your trading. Now we can start looking at what assets these events are likely to impact. And as you can see, for this particular event, there is a huge list of different assets. Anything linked to the US dollar is likely to be impacted by this particular event. So we're talking currencies, commodities, indices, and cryptocurrencies. By selecting the particular market that's most of interest to you, you can get a detailed look at what impact this particular event is likely to have on the trades that you've got open at the moment, whether that be currencies like Euro US dollar or commodities like gold. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to look at Euro US dollar, and we can see the history of the US employment report. We have a chart here indicating what's happened previously. We can then see the difference between what was forecast versus the actual number. Now we can see on this particular chart that the difference between what was expected versus the actual number is quite substantially different. So the forecasts tend to be quite different from what we actually see. And this is what creates all the volatility. So where we have on the chart the green dots, that indicates that the number was actually above the market forecast. Anything in red indicates that the number was below the market forecast, and we can easily visualize this on the chart. Now below that, we can actually start to look at the impact this had on the particular asset that we've chosen. So we've chosen Euro US dollar, and we can see that based on the last 10 events of the US employment report, that there's been some substantial volatility in the particular price of Euro US dollar. In fact, on average, over the last 10 events, we have seen 42.5 pips worth of movement in Euro US dollar 1 hour after the US employment report. So pretty substantial. Now, obviously, when we have that information, we can use that to our advantage. It might be that you want to get out of the market completely because that's too much volatility that you're willing to accept. Alternatively, it might create opportunities for you. If you are looking for volatility, then you can reference this to see what impact and what markets are likely to be of most interest or have the biggest range of volatility. Below that, we can look at the news. So what is the latest news with regards to the asset that we selected? So we selected Euro US dollar, but if we had selected gold or oil or any other asset, we will be able to see the news that's relevant to that particular market. And we can read all of this news within the platform itself without the need to go elsewhere. Below the news, we have a news sentiment tool. This is quite simply a summary of what's happening in the news. So without actually having to read the news, we can visualize on a chart what has been the change in news sentiment over a particular period of time. So over the last month, on this particular chart, we can see that the red background indicates that news sentiment has been bearish towards Euro US dollar, but we can also see that this has been trending higher. So there has been a shift in news sentiment, potentially turning more positively, and we can see that there's a high degree of correlation between the price and news sentiment. This can be a really useful tool when you find divergences between news sentiment and price, and can often be a leading indicator that can provide trading opportunities. So that covers it for the economic events, but that's not where the calendar ends. As we mentioned at the top, there was a tab that would allow you to select corporate earnings. So if you're interested in trading stocks, this is where you need to go to find out all the key information that's upcoming for some of the major companies across the world. On the corporate tab, we can see that there are all of these different economic events which are likely to impact major companies across the globe. Now, in the same way as we looked at on the economic calendar, these are segmented, but this time by different types of events. So we are looking at earnings, dividends, calls and webcasts, stock splits, and IPO and M&A. And again, they're color-coded for reference. Again, on the top right-hand corner, we have a number which indicates the amount of events that are out for these particular types. So in blue, we have earnings, and we can see here there is 67 different companies in the US that reported on Friday, the 10th of May. We can also see corporate descriptions for all of these companies as well. So if you are unfamiliar with what these businesses do, you can educate yourself to find out a lot more about what these companies offer and whether or not it's a particular interest to you. And in the same way as we did with the economic events, we can see what impact things like earnings have had on stock prices previously. So it's a really useful tool for understanding what to expect, particularly around things like earnings, and how you can set up your trades to try and take the most advantage from the markets as possible. I hope you found that video useful on how to use calendars. These tools are available, as mentioned, within the FXPesa portal. Hopefully that was a useful video on how to navigate the calendar tool. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments below with any questions that you may have, and the team will get back to you. If you want some more educational videos on various tools that are offered by FXPesa, check out the other videos that we have, and don't forget to subscribe.